Is there a danger that the emphasis on the economic benefits of regeneration can overshadow other benefits such as the social and therapeutic values of public spaces? Yeah.
The one that always sprang to my mind was the spoof. You probably all know the Evening Chronicle in Newcastle. There was a spoof mock-up of the Evening Chronicle that was done during the Capital of Culture Day, and the headline for the front page of that was City Council asked workers to leave for Culture Day. Because the idea that Geordie culture could be marketed on that global scale, with flagships being Sting, Viz and Martin Johnson from AC/DC, well, compared to the Beatles from Liverpool, we were never going to win on that platform. So the emphasis on the urban environment was made much more central, and unfortunately we didn't win, but our urban environment is way much nicer than what they've got in it.
Well, that was one thing tagged on to the end of one of the questions was, do you think we actually have as a city and as kind of citizens of the city have become more cosmopolitan?
Well, I think we're heading in that direction. I mean, you have sophisticated pockets in the city, and you can find them in small towns too. People who appreciate art and culture in different ways, and who have a broader, context to where they live and how they live. I think we have to realize. What worries me is something I've seen in other places: the marketing, the boosterism, that first phase of regeneration, and then there's a kind of fatigue that follows, and there's a complacency. And I think right now, if you look at Newcastle, all the big projects are done. And so everybody's kind of like, the reality is the big projects are about to begin. So you've got Discovery Quarter, Science City, but also for the first time, the huge amount of regeneration is going to take place. It's going to be in Walker Riverside. It's going to be in Scotswood, Benwell. It's going to be in the neighborhoods. And I don't think you can do Grangertown in those neighborhoods. And given the success of Grangertown and the things that are disappointing, we got to make sure we don't do that with Science City, Discovery Quarter, because that should be the gateway linking us throughout the West End and vice versa from Scotswood. So there's a lot of interesting planning and I think decision making that has to be done. And I do think that, again, in consultation, people who are interested in the idea of living in a cosmopolitan city that is, a European city, internationally exciting, etc., with a local identity, local flavor, you have to get involved. I mean, if you leave it up, I mean, I'll tell you a story. This is a storyteller. I was at a museum in Belfast and saw where the new building and the old building was, and it was separated. And I said to one of the directors of the building, I said, you have a problem there. He says, yes, we have a leak in the roof. And I said, it's not a leak in the roof. The new building is settled and it's separated. Oh, well, we were putting down all this stuff we used to call bear shit. You just slap it in. And I said, well, there's a really simple way to solve the problem. And he said, don't tell me I retire in 6 months. When you're dealing with municipalities and all, remember there's an entropy built into the system. There are people who have found their way of doing business, and that's the way they want to do it. There are people who are looking at, all I got to do is 6 more months and I'm out of here. If nobody's telling them what we want them to do, nobody has to listen. So again, we need. I think if this, as this discussion shows interest, if we're going to carry that into a deeper, more substantial dialogue, it's not just my job. It's all of us.
I'm just going to shift the conversation slightly, which is more to do with the galleries in the region, specifically the Baltic and the Lang. The Baltic Gallery has chosen not to have a collection, but rather an ongoing exhibition and events programme, whereas the Lang has a municipal collection, much of which relates to the heritage of the city and the region. What do you feel the position of these two different galleries is in terms of helping to create and define an identity for the city and its residents? So it's kind of a similar question, but the galleries.
Well, I think, the role of the Lang is pretty obvious, given we actually have got the historic collection that belongs to the city of Newcastle. And obviously that's got a role in creating an identity for the city. One of the things that I'm aware that we're not capitalising on, and we're certainly not alone across the country, is that we're not really collecting contemporary art. And this is a big national concern at the moment. There is a crisis in collecting not only contemporary but historical work. And it's to do with things like money, fundamentally having pots of money to actually bid to, but also having support from your authority that you've got enough seed money to actually use that to then bid for more money. There's a problem within municipal galleries of expertise in contemporary art as well, and confidence, because our focus is quite different in terms of collection management. But at the Lane we do produce contemporary exhibition, contemporary art exhibitions as well as historical, but our main focus is historical. So there are a number of reasons why it's actually not happening. I mean, the other thing is funding. The Arts Council fund temporary art exhibitions, but they don't fund collecting contemporary art, which I think is wrong, if I dare say that.
Who would you go to then? Would it be Contemporary Art Society?
It's Contemporary Art Society, not a funding body, even though they did actually put together a package with the Arts Lottery, which is now finished, which is a special collection scheme which allowed curators to travel internationally to gain expertise and therefore have confidence developing collections, but also to have advice from people who actually are used to buying, so to have that support as well, and to actually have the money to do it. Now, for whatever reason, Newcastle missed the boat with that, and Sheffield, where I worked before, it's nothing to do with me, didn't actually become part of that scheme either. But it is something that they're reviewing currently and looking for funding to do that. And I understand with the Arts Council as well, because I'm looking at Sam, there's a new document, Turning Point, which is actually looking at how does the heritage connect up with the contemporary, how does collecting work with programming as well. And it's something, obviously, the Lane in Newcastle we very much want to be part of. And the Museums, Libraries and Archives Commission are also looking at setting up subject specialist networks around contemporary art to bring the expertises together, the national expertise. But also, I was talking to Elisabetta earlier, and why isn't there a dialogue between Baltic and Lane in terms of developing that expertise, which might not necessarily mean that we would buy things, that everything that Baltic produces that we would buy, because that just wouldn't make practical sense in terms of our gallery, in terms of, it's a historical Edwardian building, there's a collection there already, so it has to connect with what's already there to make sense. But there certainly needs to be some kind of dialogue and conversation, and not just with Baltic, but obviously with artists in the region about how we can do that, and how we can reflect the sort of the national, the international scene, but also regionally what's happening as well. And I have to be honest, I don't feel fully connected with that, although we are we've got a visual arts forum that started, which Lana's sitting here and there's others sitting here who's part of. So we've got a visual arts coordinator who's actually based in the Lane, and actually tries to bring people from the different sections of the art community together to discuss what we're doing. So it's kind of starting, but it's not. We're not there yet, but it feels very positive.
Well, obviously Baltic has a very different function in which we are creating a sort of contemporary identity. So we aim to present the newest forms of making art, whatever they are, whether they are multimedia installations or performances, music, sound pieces or whatever. But we our function is to sort of bring the newest types of art that otherwise would not necessarily be shown, and we have the kind of budget to bring in the sort of bigger names within the art world. And in doing so, I think I think for the people of Newcastle and Gateshead, to have a gallery which has a budget to offer that is quite amazing. And we think how many towns in Europe even have that, there's so very few.